very warm welcome to episode 79 of my Doll's House Diary. Now in today's episode I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. So on screen here you can see me cutting the pieces for a small sideboard for my Doll's House living room. And in the living room I'm going for a log cabin style. So I'm going to have lots of lovely deep red and cream fabrics and lots of different textures as well. This is going to be a 2-door, 2-drawer sideboard, and later on in the episode you'll see me apply a brown mahogany wood dye. Now because I've made similar pieces to this on the channel in the past, I'm not sharing this as a complete tutorial. But what I have done is record the entire build from start to finish, and I thought it might be nice if I just have a bit of a natter, talk about my love of the Doll's House and miniatures hobby, and ask you questions as I go along, just as a way of getting to know you all a little bit better. So I think like most miniaturists, my love of dolls' houses began when I was a child, and I can remember playing with a very simple 2-up, 2-down MDF doll's house that was inherited from an older cousin. I remember it had a red papered pan tile roof, and the walls of the house were painted white, and painted onto them were flowers and trees and other things in the garden. Now also the walls inside the house were painted, very sort of simple watercolour paintings, so all of the kitchen cabinets were painted on and all of the bedroom furniture and the bathroom pieces. And as a child I didn't really like that. I wanted to be able to move things around, so the idea of things being painted onto the walls, I just didn't understand it. But with the Doll's House did come a selection of mismatched furniture. Then obviously I had no idea of scale, but I do remember the chairs being far too small, even for my collection of little German Ari dolls. And I don't know if you remember those, but they were about 2 inches high, little rubber dolls with painted on hair, and they all had different dresses and different little outfits on, and I had quite a good selection of those. I used to really enjoy displaying them inside the house, carrying out various household chores. Then I would close the doors and peer in through the windows, and for me that was quite magical. And I must admit that even to this day it's something I still love to do, close the doors and peer in through the windows, and if you get the lighting right it really can look quite special. As I got a little bit older, the Doll's House was put away into the attic and I began playing with fashion dolls. I particularly liked Pippa, and I also had a selection of Cindy's and Barbies which I shared with my older sister. And it wasn't really until I was in my 20s that my love of dolls' houses returned. I remember seeing one in the window of a charity shop. I can remember it quite clearly. It was a 3-storey townhouse and it was painted blue. I really loved the look of it, but I can remember thinking that it was fairly expensive. I think it was only about £30 or £40, but at that time I probably wasn't earning much more than that a week. So for me that would have been quite a bit of money, so I didn't buy it. And it wasn't until the year 2000 that I would eventually own my own doll's house. So by this time I was with Matt, then my boyfriend, but obviously now my husband. And we were out and about somewhere and we saw a sign for the Tame Doll's House and Miniatures Fair. At that time I didn't even know that these fairs were such a thing, but we decided to go along and have a look, and it was there that I found my dream doll's house. So it's a Len Lewis classic house and it's a 12-roomed Georgian townhouse. Now on the day Len had lots of houses there, and this was actually the smallest of the collection. He had some really beautiful houses there, but it was this particular one that I fell in love with. And then it wasn't until we got home that Matt surprised me by telling me that he'd actually put a deposit on the house and he was buying it for me as a birthday gift. So Len delivered the house on my birthday that year. And at that time we were living in a very small house, and I can remember Len making a joke saying that the doll's house was bigger than our home, which it certainly seemed to be at that time, and it was quite tight getting it through the doors. but that house is the one that you now see in my YouTube series, My Doll's House Diary, and 25 years on and it still isn't complete. So the house was delivered as a plywood shell, so no decoration at all, but Len had fitted copper tape wiring. I always knew as soon as I saw it that I wanted the house to have a red brick exterior, and my first job was to apply little brick slips to the outside of the house. And I used to buy them in packs from Doll's House Emporium, so each time I did an order I would order a couple of packs, and then I began attaching them to the outside of the doll's house using a PVA. And I can remember I'd got about halfway through the front door, so I'd just done 1.5 panels of the 3 panels. And for some reason we had to move the doll's house, so probably to decorate or something like that. And it was just so extremely heavy. So I knew that if I carried on with the brick slips, it would end up being far too heavy to ever move. So I removed all of the brick slips, made a bit of a mess of the front of the house, so had to repair it with wood filler, and then I decided on the embossed paper. And the one I've got is very realistic, and the cement in between the bricks is actually real sand, so you can rub it and the sand will come off, but it does make for a very realistic effect. So that's one tip I would give. If you do want a brick effect, I probably think you're better off going for either a paper or a foam board, but something that is going to be a little bit lighter than the actual brick slips. I think they're very good for smaller projects or little walls or things like that in a sort of outdoor scene. But if you're planning on decorating your entire house with them, it is going to make it extremely heavy. I opted as well for an embossed slate tile on the roof, and for all of the stonework I used a stone coating, which is paint with sand in it, and again that gives a really lovely realistic look. I used Humbrol gloss ivory enamel for all of the window frames, and in hindsight I wish now I had have worked out a way of painting them without painting them shut, so now none of the windows actually open, but originally they did all open as a sash window would. And I used a black Humbrol gloss for the front door along with real brass fittings. It was then time to move to the inside, and my original plan was to decorate it in a Georgian style. I think I'd just rewatched the BBC adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, and I wanted to decorate it in that style. I did actually complete the decorating, but then it was some years before I actually worked on the doll's house again, and I found when I went back to it that I wasn't happy with the decoration, and I wanted to make it into a more contemporary style house. So I'd like to ask you now how you got into the hobby. Where did it start for you? And I'd love it as well if you tell me about your first adult doll's house and what you actually did with it, or whether, like me, you're still working on it. So I want to jump forwards now to the year 2015, when I decided I wanted to turn my doll's house and miniature hobby somehow into a career. So by this time I'd set up my Facebook page, Little Bits and Pieces by Julie, and I got the name, by the way, because as I was setting up the page, I said to Matt, what should I call it? And he said, well, it's a page where you can just show all the little bits and pieces that you make. So that's how the name came about, and eventually that would be my company name. But as I say, by this time I'd done a few magazine features which I really enjoyed and which were always really popular. And I was working in an office, a 9-to-5 job. I'd been there for 10 years, and towards the end it was getting that I would go into the office and I would just be dreaming about making miniatures and getting back to my doll's house. So I knew I had to make a change. So one day I just decided to take a bit of a gamble. So the idea was that I would leave work and I would have 6 months in which I would work on my first book. And if the book wasn't a success, I would then look for another job. But I'm very pleased to say, and also very relieved to say, that the book was a success. It very quickly went to #1 in the Amazon bestsellers charts in the craft book section. So after the first book was published, and that was Step by Step Doll's House Furniture Projects in 1/12 scale, I actually started designing and building more furniture, which enabled me to do my first miniatura show in 2016. I would go on to do another couple of miniaturas, but then I started YouTube and eventually Patreon. So those channels now take up most of my time, and unfortunately I don't have the time to make stock to sell at the shows, but I always loved attending the shows, and it was really lovely to be able to meet people and put faces to the names. So it was actually in 2013 that I began sharing step-by-step tutorials on my Facebook page, and I would share them into separate albums on the page. And they were always very popular, and then one lady suggested that I set up a YouTube channel and actually share video tutorials. At that time, I hadn't really even heard of YouTube, and I'd certainly never watched anything on it, so I wasn't really sure what it was all about. But I did a bit of research and eventually set up my own channel and began sharing tutorials. And I recently watched my first tutorial back, and it was for a very simple kitchen work table. And I really didn't know much about editing then, so I've just left everything in. So it's a far sort of longer video than it needed to be, and I left everything in, all of the applying glue and waiting for the glue to dry before I moved on to the next step. So, like I say, it was a little bit long-winded, but I've learned quite a lot about editing since then and try to make the videos as tidy as I can. I won't say I make them as short as I can because I know my videos are quite long, but I do like to include a lot of detail. And I think that comes from when I was learning. There were some really good things in magazines, and I learnt a lot from magazines and from the sort of very popular books by people like Jane Harrop that were available at the time. But I always liked things to be set out in really simple terms, and I always like to know all of the details. So now whenever I create a video tutorial, I always imagine that I'm aiming it at a beginner. And that ensures then that I'm including all of the details and everything you need to know. I've apologised many times over the years for repeating certain phrases, and I know once in my Facebook group, Little Bits and Pieces by You, I asked people to name a popular phrase, and lots of you came up with certain phrases that I say all of the time, such as, apply glue to one long edge and one short edge, or we like a nice flat bottom, so make sure you sand along the bottom edge, and all sorts of things like that. So if you have a phrase that I quite often repeat, just pop it in the comments below, and I really do love to read them. So I've apologised as well for repeating things over the years, but a lot of people do say that they actually really love that because it means then that they remember what to do when they're working on their own projects or even designing a piece from scratch. And I always love to read those comments as well, where somebody hasn't actually built something, step by step from what I've shown, but they've used my techniques to create their own pieces of furniture, or they've built one of my pieces but they've adapted it in a way to suit their own style. And that's another thing I love about this hobby. So I'm showing you the basic techniques and some of my designs, but the thing I love is when you put your own stamp on things, and I think that's what the hobby is about. Your doll's house is as unique as you are, and that's sort of been my tagline all along, really. And I think that's the beauty of most hobbies, isn't it, or artwork, that the creator puts their own stamp on things, their own way of looking at things, their own style. So it was after I'd been on YouTube for a few years that another lady actually suggested I set up a Patreon account. And again, Patreon was something that I hadn't even heard of at that time, so I did a bit of research and I really liked the idea of it. And I think I liked that it would be proper lessons and I could put a little bit more time and effort into them. And as Patreon is a paid membership platform, I knew that the people that were there, my little bitsers as I call them, were there because they wanted to be there and they wanted to learn. And to date, I have over 800 little bitsers who have subscribed to the channel. And it really is a lovely place. And I always say it's my happy place because it's a really lovely community of people. I've never had an unkind comment over on Patreon. And I'm not saying that I have here on YouTube, really. I think I've been very lucky in that respect. I've had, a few complaints, constructive criticism, let's call it, but I've never had any nasty comments. So I think I've been really lucky. And I think that might be down to the fact that Doll's House and Miniature People are just such lovely people. And as I said earlier, Patreon and YouTube really do keep me busy, and that's what I spend most of my working day working on. So over on Patreon, I share 3 videos a month. So I have Tier 1, which is called Tea, Biscuits and Doll's House Chatter, and it's a bit of a mixed monthly vlog, really. Sometimes I might be trying something new or a new technique. Occasionally I share shorter tutorials, and at the moment we're actually running a mini-series where we're building a bedroom room box. And in the room box I'm going to be sharing loads of techniques for making floors, panelling, patio doors and all things like that. So it's going to be a really lovely room box, as well as all of the furniture which I've made as part of the monthly furniture tutorials, and all of the lovely accessories as well. And I'm really looking forward to dressing the bed, as I've got some really lovely fabric lined up for it. So in Tier 2 over on Patreon, I run a series, and this time I'm turning a Mountville doll's house into a 1940s family home. I think we're on about episode 42 so far, and we've completed a couple of rooms and we're now moving into the children's bedroom. Then for my 3rd video each month, I share, like I say, a furniture tutorial, and the tutorials are always a little bit longer and more skilled pieces of furniture. And there are now about 77 tutorials over there. So without sort of turning this into an advert for Patreon, just to say that whenever you join and at whatever tier you join, you immediately unlock every video I've ever shared. And then as a little bit of a bonus, I share a daily update. So a little video of between 3 to 5 minutes long, just updating you on what I'm working on that particular day, and asking as well what my little bitsers are up to. So if you don't want to join as a paid member, you can come over and join for free and see my daily updates. But back here on YouTube, I intend now to continue with my Doll's House Diary series, and I want to complete the Doll's House before I move on to any other projects. Now, if you've been following the series, you'll know that there is still quite a bit to do. So although I've got quite a way on with a few of the rooms, all of the rooms still need lots of bits and pieces to finish them off, and then some of the rooms, such as the study, are completely empty. So in the study, I'm actually not happy with the dark blue paint that I chose, so I'm actually going to be changing the colour scheme in there, and I've already had quite a few ideas about that. But my first plan is to actually finish off the guest bedroom and then carry on with the living room, which I spoke about earlier and which I'm going to be turning into a log cabin style room. And of course I'll be sharing tutorials here for all of the miniatures I make and the smaller pieces of furniture as well. But if you haven't seen any of my Doll's House Diary series, if this is perhaps the first video you're joining me on, then you can go right back to the beginning in my Doll's House Diary playlist. And I've got quite a few playlists set up on the channel. So there's one in there where you'll find quite a few furniture tutorials, lots of miniatures as well. And I also have a crochet playlist. So whenever I've done any crochet projects, I've saved them in there, even if it's part of another project, such as a double bed. So a lot of people get in touch asking, have you ever made this or have you ever made that? And the easiest thing to do is actually search YouTube for whatever it is you're asking for and just put Julie Warren in front of it. And I always find that when I do that, it does bring up the particular video. So if ever you're wondering if I've made a particular thing, then just search Julie Warren, so-and-so, whatever it is you're looking for. You'll also find in the playlists my Christmas room box, which I built last December. And I think that's about, is it 5 or 6 videos here on the channel? I actually built the room box and then decorated it. And that had actually been on my to-do list for quite a while. I love the idea of having a little Christmas room box to bring out every Christmas. Although I didn't actually pack it away last year, and it is sitting in my craft room on the top shelf. And it is actually a plan of mine to return to the Christmas room box, although I'm not going to have time now before Christmas. But I really want to make some 12th scale embroidered stockings to hang on the fireplace. I think they'll look really lovely. I've just got some very simple little felt ones there at the moment. So another question I have for you is, what sort of festive room boxes or projects have you worked on? And do you decorate your doll's house for the season? Now, a lot of you might know that I consider a piece finished and complete once it's made. So with my beds, for example, I do actually glue down the bedding. I don't change the bedding and I don't redo the rooms. So I consider that once I've actually dressed them, then that's it. And then I'll move on to another project rather than coming back to each room and decorating it. But I do love to see it when people do put up little Christmas decorations in the doll's house or dress the houses for Halloween or Valentine's Day and all the other sort of festivities throughout the year. So just drop a comment below and let me know if that's something that you do. So, as I mentioned earlier, one of my main goals is to complete my doll's house, so finish decorating it on the inside and outside, as there are still a few things I need to do outside, such as age up the chimney pots, which are still very brightly coloured terracotta. But once I've done that, I've got a few other plans for maybe 2 or 3 years in the future. And one of the things I've always wanted to do is design and build my own doll's house. So a couple of doll's houses that I want to build are a little cottage, so a real sort of traditional style cottage, which I'll decorate on the inside and out. And perhaps there'll be room as well for a little garden area. And I just want it to be very traditional. Now, I don't know if you know the paintings of Alison Griffin, but she does some beautiful paintings just of sort of old-fashioned cottage-style rooms. Do Google her and have a look at some of her artworks. They're all really beautiful, and that's the sort of style I would like to go for. And I may do that as a patron project one day as the series for Tier 2. Another doll's house I would like to build is what I call my abandoned house. So the plan here is that it's a house that has been empty for, I don't know, maybe 50 or 60 years, and somebody stumbles across it in the middle of nowhere, and I would dress it so that maybe one of the windows is cracked and there's a tree coming through. I wouldn't make it too old and dusty because I actually find that quite scary, but it would certainly look like a house that has been stood empty for all of those years. And I mentioned earlier as well that I'm currently working on a Mountfield doll's house, and the thing I love about the Mountfield is that you can see through, so it's sort of got a double aspect, so you can see through the rooms at the front into the rooms at the back, and I really love that. And I love the idea as well of having maybe 3 doors that open on different sides of the house, and maybe even a little secret panel where you can peer into a little secret room, but you can't actually access it once it's been, dressed and decorated. So I would make it rather large, as my idea is it's sort of like a small manor house in the country. And why it is such a big goal for me is because I wouldn't be able to build the house in my craft room, so I wouldn't be able to build it in the house. I would need to have some sort of large shed or outbuilding outside where I could actually build it, but also bearing in mind that I would then want to bring it inside to decorate, so I would need to be able to fit it back in the door. So there's going to be lots of planning involved in that. I've already done some very sort of basic sketches of the sort of thing I would like, and I already have a few ideas for the interior as well. And I imagine the woman who used to live there was perhaps either an opera singer or maybe an actress and a bit of a diva, and I would love to have some of her dresses on mannequins in a particular room, maybe a lovely glamorous dressing room or something. But like I say, that will be a few years in the future. But again, I'd like to ask you a question and ask you, what plans do you have in your doll's house and miniatures hobby? And it might be something that you would like to design and build, such as a doll's house or a room box, or it might just be a new skill that you would like to learn. Do let me know in the comment section below. So the other thing I would like to ask you is what other hobbies or interests you have beside dolls' houses and miniatures. So for me there are quite a few. So I really love photography, I love nature photography, and would love to enter a competition such as Bird of the Year competition or something like that, or even the Countryfile calendar competition, but I think I need to get some better photographs taken first. I also love lots of other crafts. I love cross stitch, and I've done quite a few of those. I really enjoy crochet. You probably know that I'm a mini crocheter, but I also crochet in full size, and I've made quite a few blankets over the years. One that we have on our bed at the moment, a lovely big granny square Afghan in creams and beiges. I've also done a Christmas poinsettia throw, and you can actually find a tutorial for that over on my other YouTube channel, which is called Happy Moments with Julie, and that's where I share some of the other interests that I have. I also love to read, and I call myself a bit of a chain reader, so I've always got a book on the go and have had for the last 20 or 30 years. And one thing, you'll probably think I'm a little bit of a geek for this, but I do actually keep a list of all of the books that I've read. So I've got a whole book full of notes on all of the books that I've read, and just recently I've started marking them out of 10 as well, so I can remember whether I enjoyed it or not. At the moment I'm reading a book by Sebastian Faulks, and it's called 7 Days in December. I'm finding it quite hard going because there are quite a few characters in it, but I do love his style of writing. And then I've actually got a book lined up that Matt recommended to me. He's just read both of Bob Mortimer's books, and I can't remember what the first one is called now. It's gone out of my mind. It's something to do with Satsumas, I think. Matt has insisted that I read it. He says I'll really enjoy it. So I'm looking forward to starting on that one as well, and that should be a fun Christmas read. And I'd love to know what you're reading at the moment or what you've got lined up for the Christmas break. I also really love creative writing, and over the years I've written quite a lot, many short stories, and I've also written a couple of books, one that I sent off for a children's book competition, which unfortunately I didn't win, and I'm currently working on a young adult's novel or a teenage novel, which I'm really enjoying. I also love classical music, and I never learned to play the piano, but I'm trying to teach myself now, and I'm sort of fumbling my way through Fur Release. So my goal is to be able to play it through note perfect before I then start learning something else, and there are so many lovely pieces of piano music that I would love to learn. So let me know if you play an instrument or whether you're learning something at the moment, or whether it's perhaps one of your goals for 2026. Another thing I absolutely love to do is walk, and some of you will know that for 7 or 8 years now we've been walking our neighbour's dog, Woody. He's a beautiful black lab. He's very boisterous, very strong, and always full of energy. So we walk him 3 to 4 times a week. And it's actually a goal of mine for next year to walk a little bit more and perhaps try and find some different walks or some hikes and things like that. I would love to hike up a mountain. Nothing too steep, as I don't actually like heights, but just, a really long, hard walk where you come back feeling really tired and all you want to do is put your feet in a bowl of water. So I'm coming now towards the end of the build, and here I'm just attaching the feet. And I've also made a coffee table for the living room, and I used this same style of foot. And I think this is a really nice little detail to add. You can either just add a beveled bottom piece and stand it on that, or if you've used strip wood for legs, then obviously the bottom of that would be your feet. But just creating these 8 little pieces, which you can either just leave as a square or you can shape as I've done here. It just adds a really nice detail and makes the piece look a little bit different as well. So I suppose it would be an alternative to a longer moulding, which you would fit all the way along the front and then just have your square mouldings at the back and sides. So I feel now that I've spoke for quite a long time. My throat is getting quite dry, so I'm going to leave you here, and I'm going to leave you with a little bit of relaxing music just to see out the video. But I really hope you've enjoyed this. As well, do let me know in the comments below if this is something you would like me to do in future. I do occasionally make pieces of furniture that I don't share tutorials for, but I would be very happy just to set the camera up and film what I'm doing and then come in and have a bit of a natter. But if this is something you don't really want to see on the channel, then also do comment below. But I thought it might be nice just to give it a try. A lot of people have said that they do actually like the sound of my voice. Some people have said that they even use my videos to put them to sleep. So I'm not sure if that's a compliment or not, but I'll take it as one. So I really do hope you've enjoyed this little natter today, and I really look forward to reading your comments. So, as I say, I'm going to leave you now, but I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day or your evening, or if you're on your way to bed, I hope you have a wonderful night's sleep. Good night.